Take the book back.
At the end of the
Yeah.
period.
Alex, I can't keep this.
Analyze the cause of Nujood's pilot. Is that first name? Flight. Yeah, flight. Anybody?
No? The Jude's major and most obvious plight is that she was married off against her will at 10 years old, at 10 years of age.
It wasn't really against her will because she didn't really have any opinion. She wasn't given a choice.
She wasn't given a choice.
Yeah,
It was
against
against
her
her will.
Against her will.
I agree with
So she didn't like disagree with it.
She sort of did.
She got a divorce.
Yeah, obviously she disagrees.
That was
with it.
afterwards. So.
She went to her parents for help to get out of
She
it.
didn't get married in the first place, and that was completely obvious.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between disagreeing and arguing or rebelling?
No.
You can disagree with something, doesn't mean you do something about it.
It's like saying, "Oh, I don't like Obamacare. I'm not gonna overthrow the government."
It doesn't mean that you approve.
So she's disagreeing with it, but
She disagreed with it, but she didn't say, "No, I'm not going to marry him."
Probably because she couldn't. If she did, wouldn't make a difference.
Same case with me overthrowing the government. I wouldn't have made a difference by myself.
Her
She went to the court of
sister-
law. I wouldn't need an army to overthrow the government.
If you think about it, she did her divorce basically on her own. She
Her
didn't have
sister
anybody
died.
to help.
she had a lawyer and all
Had a
those
lawyer
judges.
who got the feminist ruling.
Yeah. I think we're kind of already moving into the second question too.
A little bit. Second question was analyze the cause of Nujood's success in attaining a divorce. So I think we're kind of transitioning into that now with the whole. She had the lawyers by her side and
Kind of
well,
made
the
everyone
lawyer,
like, feel
the one
bad for.
that we know of, and also all the feminist groups and all the women's rights activists that her lawyer got for her.
Well, if somebody else had done her before, then nobody would have helped her. It's just because she was the first person to do it.
I don't think anything would have happened without the help of the newspapers and media, because no one would have known about it, no one would have supported it. But the media made it a big deal, and that helped her out, I think, probably one of the most. That and shot it.
I agree, because without getting the word out, it wouldn't have made a big difference and everything would just go back to what it normally is. But if something's a big problem and it gets publicity, then it kind of sways it to what's morally right than what is tradition.
I also think if the judges didn't feel bad for her, that it wouldn't have gotten very far.
Yeah. I could have just said no like right away.
Anything else?
I agree with Hannah.
My boyfriend.
Because it's a good thought.
Because in the text when she went to the courthouse and talked to the judge, she was surprised and he was like, "You're married?" So she felt bad.
She's a little young for that.
Even in a very extreme society that has these norms, people will still feel that it's wrong and feel the need to help her.
Yeah.
We keep talking about things outside of Nujood herself that caused success. What kind of things that were actually in Nujood herself caused her to do this? I can, for one, say that her courage really helped. What do you think, Tanner?
Yeah, well, I guess it probably would be desperation as well. No one would want to live that life.
Yeah.
Courage from desperation.
I think she was one of the most courageous women there. Because I bet a lot of other women wanted to get a divorce but didn't have the courage to.
Also, like after she had already gone there, a bunch of people were saying, "No, was a bad idea. Why are you doing this?" But she ignored them because she knew what she's getting into, to a point anyway.
I think it was more of her misery that pushed her to do it more than anything.
Yeah.
What could you tell, what could you tell was the attitude of the Yemeni students yesterday about the whole issue of child marriage?
They didn't want us to think it was that big of an issue anymore.
And they thought we thought that everyone was like that.
They kind of thought like the book portrayed it in a different way than it really is.
Then again, wasn't it like 6-7 years ago?
In 2008 and 2009.
5 or 6 years ago. Since that book was published, a lot of things have been changing. So it may be changing now for better or worse. I don't know how it went yesterday. So
I believe the way they said things were changing were they were getting more rights for women in Yemen.
And what did they say was one of the reasons for that? A couple of them mentioned. I think it was the gentleman who said the father is wrong. He didn't treat her well, but we don't believe that anymore. We are people who are. Remember what he mentioned?
I don't remember.
Educated.
education.
Should we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Analyze the obstacles for foreseeing the Nujood's attaining success in the future.
The extreme conservative people of her society could protest her success by threatening her as she lives throughout the rest of her life by breaking a norm in their society.
I think her main difficulty will probably be the fact that nobody's going to want to marry her again. Like, when she gets old enough and decides she wants to marry somebody, they're not going to want to marry somebody that got a divorce, especially at the age she did and the way she did.
I thought that just because she's a special case of divorce in Yemen doesn't mean that she'll get any special attention in the future. Like, it can, but it doesn't mean they will. For example, if she wants to go into some kind of career besides a lawyer, or maybe even like if she wanted to be a lawyer and she wanted clients that were male, the males would not accept her in her society. So it might actually end up hurting her in the long run rather than helping her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also, I think that even though women are gaining more rights in the Middle Eastern countries, that depending on where she goes, it may be a little harder for her to get a job in whatever career, because women's rights are still not as progressive as they are here, and even here they're not as progressive as what we need them to be.
Colin, do you have anything to say on the matter?
No.
What about you, Garrett?
Yeah.
Chris?
No.
Leah?
No.
Anyone else?
I think it'll change, like, the tradition of her family. like her kids aren't gonna be able to get married young like everybody else, and like the father, her future husband, might disagree with that.
Wouldn't it be harder for her to get married? Don't they like look for virgins? And since she's not, that wouldn't really mean that she's as wanted as she was before.
Plus, they're looking at 10-year-olds and she'll be older than that.
If you think about what the Yemeni students were projecting as a perspective, as an attitude, do you think anyone with that type of progressive attitude might be willing to or apt to value someone like Nujood? Because
Because like Elise said, they're like looking for version stuff.
And she's
It's
too
really not,
outspoken.
Let's move on to the last question.
Analyze the choices of Nujood and Delphine. What? Manui in the structure of her story.
It took a lot of courage by both of them to do that. 'Cause it was like the first time it's ever been done there.
I think she actually aimed and spoke more towards the first world countries rather than because a lot of the men there would be really angry to even hear about the book that were like against women's rights and especially like the Taliban and stuff like that in the Middle East.
It's written in the way of figurative language and imagery to invoke feelings of emotional severity and empathy and sympathy towards Jude and give you an idea of what it's like to live there in her position.
Yep, I agree with that.
She wrote it for us to like raise awareness.
The way the story was just written in general makes you have to picture the scene out as it is, which will make you think more, and it makes your brain think more on this topic about the whole women's rights and what's right and what's wrong, what's morally right and wrong, not traditionally right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That goes by your opinion. To them, they think that is morally right.
That's a good answer, Seth.
But because of that language that hooks more into emotions, is our emotions more hooked to humanity in general than to a culture?
Maybe.
Final thoughts?
It was a good story.
I feel like it gives other people like her age that might be in the same situation an idea or like hope that it might get better or they can make it better for themselves.
Yeah.
In the long run.
And she did do that already, we know, for a number of people.
I wasn't there yesterday, but weren't the Yemeni students talking about it really isn't that bad in their society or something like that?
Right, they
So-
made a big point of implying that not everything is like this, that that's old school.
So-
But they in a way might be somewhat blinded to realities of things outside in the villages that they don't have experience with.
So maybe there might be a hint of like sensationalism in this book to make you be appealing to like readers. But like I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but they could like say that to appeal to like an audience with sensationalism.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. Okay, we are gonna switch. Before we switch,
Actually, something nice.
what are some things that the outside circle will need to do in order to just make your conversation better? What are some things?
Excuse me.
Cody, do you have a question? An answer
Well,
to what I just said?
Actually, something on here that really is somebody signed in as Cody, you're dumb. And then they put Cody, you're dumb as their comment.
Oh, sorry.
Seriously.
I put my name.
I put my name. There's a part where I accidentally had a different name. Or like, yeah, it was
My apologies.
something
My apologies for that.
happened. I
Okay,
don't know what.
evaluate.
Something happened.
I need an answer to the question. What, on the insight circle now, what are you going to do from experiencing the outer circles discussion? What are some things that, you know, we should probably do this so that our discussion is even better?
Less awkward silences.
Okay, so how do you fix that?
When someone's done talking,
Okay,
someone joins in.
yeah, getting the courage to jump in.
Leave more of like instead of like each thing you say having like set an end to it, like leave what you say with more chances for other people to talk after.
Yeah. Opening that up, maybe paraphrasing and then inviting someone in. Yeah. So what we were just saying here was, okay, paraphrasing it or summarizing it and inviting someone in. Yeah. Anything else?
Let's get started.
Yes. Yeah, so we need to get 2, 4, 6, 8, and one more chair.
Let's get started.
Let's go.
And I think there's room between Nate and Lily, probably. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah. All right, are you ready? We'll go until 8, 17 after, and then you will evaluate. Okay, so content, discussion, Karen, content, Chris, discussion, content, Sam, Seth, discussion, Alec, content, Chris, Tanner, discussion, and Colin, content.
Remind me of the discussion.
Oh, discussion is commenting on their discussion skills. All right?
Analyze the cause of Nujood's plight. In my opinion, she's in this plight because of her culture, because in her culture, women and men are not equal. And so we heard in the book that men still can decide over women.
I think that's right, but also I think it's because when his father got in a fight at their old thing, if they hadn't done that, maybe they wouldn't be in the situation there.
I somewhat disagree and somewhat agree because on the Skype with the Yemeni or kids, some of them said that it wasn't quite exactly like that. They were getting more rights. So,
but you also have to remember that's 7 years later. So,
Yeah.
7 years ago, things probably might have been like this in that type of place. It was very cultural, very traditional because they were born in big cities.
Yeah, and Nujood's family wasn't well off either. So, what her father thought her options were limited.
Well, I can't disagree with that they weren't well off. I mean, they weren't well off later on in the book, but before that, they were well off in Karjat before the duel happened. They were well off in the fact that he had tons of livestock back in Karjat, but then he lost it all in that skirmish. So then they had to move to the sea, and that's when they became not well off. So
They weren't like well off. They were like
They were
middle
better.
class.
well, yeah, but if they
middle
had,
class.
yeah, but you have to admit that if they still lived in Karjat and had all that livestock, then he probably wouldn't have had to marry the Jude off.
Well,
Because
he married the
He
sister
had
off early too.
Yeah, he had to marry her older sister off early because of what happened
well, yeah, but
to
she
her.
got
So
raped.
that
Exactly.
So that
But Nujood
that
didn't
adds on to what he wants from Nujood because he doesn't want Nujood to be raped as well, and then he has to marry her off that way. So in a way, he's thinking he's protecting his daughter.
But he got money for it, and he probably wouldn't have had to do it early. If he wanted to marry off, then shouldn't he follow the proverb that if you show me a 9-year-old girl, I'll show you a happy marriage? And he didn't marry off when she was 9 because she's been told multiple times she was 10. So if he wanted to really protect her, he should have done it at the earliest convenience.
Well, I don't think if they would still live in Karjat, I don't think he would have married her off for money. I think he would have married her off to save her, what he thought would be saving her.
Okay, but can you at least agree that they were well off enough that he didn't have to marry off for the money in the beginning? Because that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yes, no one's disagreeing with that.
I think it was because it was in a big city and they had not that good of education, and now the education is better, and so it changed.
Yeah. Plus the farmer livestock they got their like stuff they could sell. So they got money for.
Another reason why I think that they weren't as well off as what they were in Karji is because the father didn't really have a job. He was just going to the market or where all the men went to go and try to get or pay as a laborer. So.
But after a while, he gave up on that.
Plus,
So he had a job, some sort of a job, and then he declined that.
plus he spent all of his money on chewing cod. So.
Yeah.
He didn't really have a job. He was just relying on people
That's
to
why I
hire
said
him
he
for
kind of
that.
had a job.
Well, I disagree because he did have a job when he first came. He had that sweeping job, and then he started chewing cod,
That
so he
was the
didn't work
only
it out.
one-time thing. Yeah.
No, he had it for a while, it said in the book, and then he got fired because he didn't go.
So I'm confused. Are we saying the main plight is the fact that they were in poverty or the culture?
Little both.
Little both.
Little both.
All right. We're kind of divided. I mean, I personally think it's more of the cultural aspect, but poverty did play a role in it.
Okay, so analyze the cause of Jude's success in attaining a divorce. One of the things that I think was one of the parts of her success is the judges and her lawyer. I can't remember her name exactly. Because they could have as easily as they wanted to just turn her away, and so if they wanted to, so I mean,
Well,
I think that they didn't turn her away because like the judge like had children of his own, and like he's fortunate enough or he wouldn't have to do that for money, so like he felt sorry for her. That's the reason why he helped her.
I agree with you because in my perspective, I think what helped her was her age. And the judge had children of his own, and I think what helped her the most was actually her age in her particular.
I think we're really overlooking the fact that I think her main success was her courage.
I agree.
I mean, without that, she would have never have been able to even like look at the judge. I mean, the judges wouldn't even have the ability to turn it down if she had had the courage to go up there. What'd you say, Nolan?
Oh, I was saying, I disagree because I think it's actually, she never would have found out about the courthouse if she had never gone to to her father's second wife, and she's the one who told her about the courthouse. So really, no one else was helping her, and the second mother was the only one who would help her by giving her the advice to go there and giving her months.
It was still her courage.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, but she
it
never
was her
would've-
courage that sent her back
and it
to
wasn't.
her family, and it was also her courage that made her go to her dad's second wife because she learned from there.
But it said multiple times in the book that she went to multiple other people before she went to the wife. It was courage that made her seek out people to help her, but.
Well, it was courage because when she was back in college, she was isolated. Every time she asked to go back, she was beaten for it. So when she came and she asked the people that she thought would help and they didn't,
She went to the next
next person and the next person, and then finally the next person told her to go to the courthouse, and she did.
Well, is that really courage that made her go to the next person, or is that more courage and determination that made her go to the next person?
Could I say something?
Yeah,
And
Tim, go.
it wasn't. She wasn't even her father's second wife. It was like cousin.
No,
Because she was married, or wasn't, or was.
It was his second wife. It was his
It didn't
second
really-
wife that she
But
went to.
Sorry.
another thing is she in the beginning of the book she looked up to her brother Fares, and I think that's partially where she got some of that courage from, because Fares had the courage to run off to Saudi Arabia, and so that's where she got some of that courage.
Well, I kind
Go
of
to courthouse.
I disagree that it was courage wrong to Saudi Arabia because that was more just kind of not knowing what the world was. So it might have been courage to Jude, but it was more, he didn't know what the real world was like. Because it says later on he didn't make much money in Saudi Arabia, and so it's more.
All right, let's just go on to the next section. Analyze obstacles you foresee in Jude attaining the success in her future. Well, I think her biggest obstacle would be her own family, like her father, her older brother. It even says, quote from the book, "You've sullied the reputation of our family. You have strained our honor." Quote her father.
I think we do
So-
need to.
Yeah.
I thought that was the uncle.
I think we need to let some of the people that haven't spoken at all talk. Like I know Chase hasn't really said anything.
Chase, wouldn't you say one of the biggest obstacles would be your family, or do you have another idea?
I agree with that, but I had down that when she got divorced, not so many men would want to marry her because they'd be ashamed that she'd get a divorce,
Well,
along with the family too.
would she even want to be married again after that is another big question.
Well, it says in the book that she doesn't want to have a.
Okay.
So I think she'd be more of an independent woman.
I don't really think it'd be her family that would be like an obstacle. I think it'd be more like the public, because they wouldn't really have people to down their reputation and everything without the public like saying, "Oh, that's what happened. You know, you guys are bad people."
I agree with Nate on the family because like the video we watched about after like a year later, her family was like kind of blaming her for their troubles. And like she was trying to get what she dreamed of. And they were just putting her down.
I still kind of want to know what happened to all that money. Oh, sorry about that.
I agree with like the public and the society and stuff because like they kind of look down on her because she changed everything and kind of ruined it for them.
Well, that's kind of a two-way street because half the population thinks that was really brave and the right thing to do.
I mean,
like-
like the
Yes.
religion people or whatever, they just like they look down on it because it's changed.
But there's still a large population that supports her and what she did.
I agree with that.
I still kind of want to know what happened to all the money that
It's going towards your schooling. It said in
Well, it's supposed to, but
They
I
also
don't
said
actually
she
know.
gave them some money.
Yeah,
And I
she got
just
20
wonder-
So there is a question as
She
to
was getting $20,000,
to where
but then
the money
that's
has gone.
here.
So,
I
Yeah,
think
she never got the money.
okay, it is 17 after. I'm going to give you the next 2 minutes. Thank you for your discussion. Your discussion, sustaining your discussion was a lot better here. What you need to do, remember, 3 things. Book over here, your discussion prep sheet over there, and self-evaluate. What did you do in your discussion today? Self-evaluate, and then leave that over on Hannah's desk over there. Okay, great job today, guys.